if you're feeling really lethargic and heavy in the legs or have edema and swelling in the ankles, that's all to do with this system. So most people have a look at the list and go, yep, I can relate to one of those or many of those. So it's important to know what we're feeling. And then the simple list of foods or categories anyway would be what I call ground and round vegetables. So as we come back to that line in the soil, anything that's just above or in the soil itself. So pumpkins, sweet potatoes, onions are actually perfect example of the earth element. They're very round and they're got all this lovely layering, and they're sweet. So a lot of the vegetables that I just described and the flavor of this element is sweet. And in that way, most people love the earth element. As soon as you start talking about earth element, they're like, oh, I can have more desserts. I'm like, well, actually, I do recommend and I prescribe desserts because we want to have this calm, nurtured, motherly love through this element. So if you look in every food culture, there's always desserts and always sweets. Of course, I'm talking about not white sugar and refined junk, but using sweet vegetables, wholesome sweeteners and condiments, fruit. And we're talking pudding, but we're also talking like pies and cakes, all this very, maybe even grandmother kind of warmth and love through our food. And that's missing in a lot of modern day dietary habits. We kind of demonize dessert or sugar or sweet flavors when actually we need them.
Well, I mean, I feel, again, it's the pendulum swinging like quite far, which I can understand and kind of went there a little, especially when there's that kind of energy of like, have a massive, I don't know, like Sunday roast dinner and then put a big heavy sugar, like overly sugary, dessert kind of on top of that. And you can feel the dysfunction of your body just like trying to like compute digesting sugar, which is like, I think my friend Sage talks about, it's like a Ferrari in the digestive system. You put it on top of like a, like a tugboat kind of equivalent, like something that's like a heavy protein that's slowly digesting. But yeah, I mean, like, and again, it's a hard and fast rule, but I do prefer the Chinese medicine, just does bring in awareness of like, well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's a lot of medicine in that. Yeah.
And you could still have that roast. I mean, you can still have that roast and the dessert. The earth element's also related to not doing anything in excess. It's all about balance. So overeating, you can eat. Earth element's all about food and nourishing and having this beautiful satiating feeling after you eat. So it's good to have that, for example, but not overdoing. And the boundary comes for most people just overeating. Good food or bad food. So the earth elements are like, no, we find balance. We eat, a little bit of everything. We have our roast, we have our puddings, we have our whatever it is, but in balance. And but as I said, most people are missing the naturally good sweet flavor. And by that, I would prefer or rank very highly the sweet vegetables and some fruit, and definitely more natural sweeteners and things like, cinnamon and cardamom and like all the sweet herbs can really help with this flavor and coming back into balance through our cooking and our food. On that note, carbs are a good thing. So the earth element is all about wholesome, happy carbohydrates. So it's not about eating lots of too many pastries or white bread or white rice, but just having some good wholesome carbohydrates, whether it's rice, white rice or sticky rice or brown rice or red rice, and then millet. Millet is the best friend of the spleen. If we're looking at the color of the season or this element, it's like a yellow or an orange, or even like a earthy brown soil. So foods that come into that category. And millet is really something that I share with a lot of people. And I've worked with people who they literally add more pumpkin, some sweet potatoes, some millet into their diet. And depending what it is, of course, but they start to notice their energy, their happiness. Like you just feel happy when you eat these nourishing foods, and you feel comforted as well. And so it's very soothing to eat foods like millet. If you don't know what millet is, I highly recommend you look it up. It's a small yellow soft, sticky, mushy grain.
Yeah, yum.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very, very, you can make it sweet and savory. So you could put like you could make into a porridge with some milk, soya milk, some cinnamon, make it with nuts and like a breakfast porridge, or you could make it with roasted vegetables and make it into more like a fluffy salad, kind of like quinoa, but a little bit moister. Yeah. So those would be my suggestions of just simple foods. And then cooking styles for this season would involve a little bit more warmth. So using your pots and pans and a little bit more moisture. So think soups, stews, casseroles, that kind of texture and consistency. And texture isn't something we've talked about a lot actually, but for this season, it's really nice one to bring in this soft, creamy, comforting flavor. Whatever that means to you. I'm going to say pudding again, but could be pudding, it could be pie, it could be crumble, a nice fruit crumble. Yeah, or even like I start to crave in late summer and going into the colder months, more creamy beverages as well. Like, I'm a black tea, green tea kind of girl, but when it gets cooler, we can start having some nice milk or soy milk or oat milk or whatever milk you choose. So start to bring that into your mornings as well.